Welcome to Design Diary, the podcast where you get to look inside my board game design notebook as well as what's going on inside my head. We look at a new word each day from the sense of mechanics, tone, theme, or inspiration for a full game. Today's word is adust. Scorched, burned. Adust. You've been turned to a dust. That's kind of what it made me think of. Sorry, I'm just flipping through my notebook. Unprepared as usual. Today's my last day at my day job, so I am in a mood. And I'm racing to get this done during my lunch hour, which is not as strict as normally since it's my last day. But here we go. So dust, scorched, burned. And I'm not leaving them scorched or burned. I'm leaving on good terms, but here we go. I also wrote a landscape of volcanic rock and sand, which was part of an example, like in a dust landscape of volcanic rock and sand. So I thought of it as a theme or a setting, and that would be the one that came to mind was a post-Fireball Island. The volcano has exploded, the marbles have rolled down or whatever, but what's the point of a post-Fireball Island? What's happening? It's sort of a post-apocalyptic, but it's a little more fine-tuned to just this volcano exploded on this island, and I guess how do we begin? Where do we go from here? Or maybe it's haunted and it's left over some remains of the ghost of the island or whatever it is. But I wrote mechanic, to burn a card. And I thought a lot about this in burning a card. It's used in a couple different ways. It's usually some sort of sacrifice, which is neat with a sacrificial volcano. Usually those go hand in hand. But to discard one from the top of the deck or to muck a card, it's also used as the term burn. So in like poker or blackjack, you might discard the top card and burn it. Tossing a card into the volcano is an interesting approach. You're burning a card. But I wrote Magic the Gathering, a burn deck is one that doesn't waste any time, so it's just super fast. But it also goes right for the life points. So that's usually a fire deck, but they also call it a burn deck. But with all that in mind, I wanted to revisit a concept that I've touched on before, where players are contributing cards to a common pool. I did this in a game called Many Moons, and what happened was those cards were sort of a vote of sorts. So everybody throws in a card, and the majority takes effect. Whatever, there's only four or five different cards you can throw in there, so whatever one has majority takes effect. Sometimes there's not a majority, but with a small amount of cards, usually that can happen. The problem with that is you need a lot of players. But what I thought was you're tossing cards into this volcano, and you're looking for, and in Many Moons they were all face down, and you flipped them over after the turn was done. But a neat way is to keep them face up, so they can hit a breaking point, so that lava's brewing and brewing and brewing, and eventually is going to explode. And if they're tossed in there face up, you're tossing cards in this common pool, the player count doesn't matter as much, because with two players, something's going to break over 6 cards in a similar way as it would with 4 players. There's just a little different dynamic in how many times you get to throw something into that pot. But if players were to burn a card into the lava pit each turn, and then eventually the group of cards is assessed, something magical, and I didn't mean entirely thematic, but also just a magical idea. Something magical could come from those cards. So something could form out of it. Something forms out of the lava. It could be good, it could be bad. I don't know. And if you know what you're tossing in there, so you're tossing a card face up, and you plan to do that, that's one thing. So you're sort of impacting that in a way. But if you're doing it with the true burn a card fashion, you'd be tossing one that you don't know. So that's neat, where you would take the top card of your of your deck or whatever and flip it into there. It's sort of a little bit of chaos. You don't know what you're doing, but if you're managing and building that deck in a deck builder kind of way or things like that, you could be grooming it to get something into that lava pit. Whether that's good or bad, we still have no idea. But I think having the insight as to what you're putting in there is neat, and it's key, and that's how I did it in many moons and other games. But I wrote players could potentially burn cards from decks that are preset. So there's decks that are in the center of play along the lines of like a deck builder again, where you're buying those cards or whatever it is. But if it's a small set of cards instead of the same one. So imagine there's a card that says draw 2 cards in like a deck builder, but it's in a small deck of ones that say draw 2 cards, but also this, draw 2 cards, but also that, just draw 2 cards. So it's the draw pile, but there's a little variance between all the cards. If those are all face down, and then you throw one of them into the pot, you threw a draw card into the pot, but you don't know which little variant. So it adds a little bit of that randomness of the traditional term burn. But I also wrote scorched is to have been burnt. So adust is to have already been burnt. So if it's not a good thing to burn a card, maybe others are doing that to you. They're forcing you to knock a card into there. So it's a way of whittling down somebody's deck or, decking them out or whatever it is. But I still feel like there needs to be a reason for it that corresponds to the term. That's not just, hey, discard a card over into that pile. It's no, you're discarding a card into the lava, and eventually that's going to blow. And when it blows, something might come out of it based on what you did. And what I mean by that is like, let's say I throw in card A, you throw in card B. There's 3 of the card C and, 5 of the card E. And when there's 5 of the same card, it pops. Or when there's 4 different cards, it pops. Or whatever it would be. I'd love to see those cards then form something. And I mean, my first thematic thing is like, that's the, that's what we're all fighting against. Or, it's the evil spirit of the island that we're all, we're here to take down or something. So as we're forcing each other to discard cards, it's kind of forming what that spirit actually is. And we're starting to see a little bit, we're gaining some information about what this spirit's going to be about. We don't quite know because it's going to take that last card to make it pop. And that last card is going to determine, which direction it goes in. If it's 4 of a kind, it goes in one direction where it's this big, heavy spirit that, I don't know, it's super powerful. But if it's 4 different cards, it's a mind-bending other kind of spirit. I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea, and I'm off the page at this point. But I'd love to see it form this thing, and it takes on traits from the cards, and it's just a cool way to like sort of randomize an opponent, or if it's a co-op, like something like the game that you're playing against, but in a way that's true to the word. I don't know. That's where I kind of went with it. I really wanted to see it create something magical. I really want to see a pool of cards be assessed. I've done that a couple times, where I want to see this multiple group of cards be assessed after a certain point. And I'd love for it to have like this, just like an art way of just all kind of blending together and forming something. Like, the way that you think is, it's got a head, a body, and a soul and whatever. And once it has all of those, it creates this sort of like art, like Avatar kind of thing. But generally, that's never done well. So we got to keep pushing for something better. Okay, that's where I'm at today. That's about as far as I got with Adust. It's a cool word though. I like it. And we'll be back tomorrow and every other day this week. So if you have anything, join us. Twitter, Board Game Geek, YouTube. I guess the iTunes comment, review. There's barely anything there. But anywhere. Just do it on your own and don't tell me. But it's cool. We're starting to see a lot of people sharing their ideas and you know, things that have been inspired by these games. So I'm calling to you to come up with something better for Adust. All right, thanks everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow. See you around.